Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here we are at the very top of the show. We're recording on a Friday night. Now, we've done quite a lot of Friday records as of late, and they're always, a little looser when we record on a Friday.
We've been through it all this week, so now we just put it all out there. I don't know exactly what it is.
Well, there you go. Well, anyhow, Joy has got an item for us at the very beginning of the show.
So I kind of talked about this already to Tim, so he's aware that, and I mean, everybody is at this point, Beyonce released a country album.
Yay!
So, the two songs that I'm going to talk about, and if you've been paying any attention to this, we all know the Texas Hold'em song was released and 16 Carriages was released as the two singles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a huge Beyonce fan. Like, I like some of her music, but she's not someone I seek out that often. There's just a few songs she's done I really like. But I will say I did listen to the Jolene. It's I don't know if it's necessarily a cover because she does change it a little bit, some of the verbiage. And then also I listened to the Blackbird version, which is definitely a cover because it's very similar.
Yeah.
So the good part about Jolene is Dolly made it. I guess she made the opening. Have you heard it yet, Tim, where she's talking to Beyonce?
Yeah. I actually heard the track before we did the recording this evening.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's sort of a cover, though it has the backing track is a little bit more contemporary, if you will.
And she changed the wording around, so it's more about like the woman big, like, you know, more aggressive at her, I guess, in more to Beyonce way. But I thought it was cute that Dolly did the opening part.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dolly put on her Instagram today how much she liked it.
That's good. Well, the thing about it is Dolly's pretty much up for everything. And she talks about she enjoys when modern day artists and different people take her music and do stuff with it. She finds that very fun, which I think is cool because some artists can be very gatekeepy with their music and act like, you know what I mean, Tim? Mm-hmm. I really like the fact that Dolly's like up to see what other people, because to me, art is interpretational and it's supposed to change over time and develop, and inspiration can come from anywhere. So that's how I kind of see it. Now, the other track we're going to talk about is Blackbird. So she did, which was originally written by Paul McCartney. He talks about how, you know, it was a lot about the Black rights movement, Mississippi. There was a lot of bad stuff happening, and he had recently, you know, seen that and heard that. And so he came up with Blackbird. Now, one thing I think is very sweet is that Beyonce did it with that kind of history, because she is very, supportive of the Black community, and she's very proud of that, which she should be. And so I thought it was cool. I actually really liked it. I think her voice sounds really nice. And there is a change in the arrangement because it kind of breaks up into parts and goes into but overall, I think it's pretty similar, and I thought it was beautiful, honestly. I really liked it.
Yeah, and it's very faithful to the original. Like you said, there's a slight arrangement change, but the backing track is almost identical. There's no noises in the background like there is on Jolene. I think this might be the second and third Beyonce track I've ever heard, because I've heard Crazy in Love before now.
I like Crazy in Love. That's with Jay-Z.
I did not know that.
You have heard a Jay-Z track now, Tim, and you were probably not aware. Yeah, there's a version with Jay-Z, but I will say, I think Blackbird was really good. I like that she kept it because of the history and the meaning and the importance behind the song. And it's a beautiful song. I like that she kept it very true to the original. I'm sure if Paul McCartney speaks out, he'll enjoy it. If he hasn't already, I haven't checked to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they'd have done like a rap hip hop version of Blackbird, I mean, that would have just been sacrilege. But as I said, it's pretty faithful to the original.
Yep. And if you guys haven't heard it, I would give it a listen. It's worth a listen, especially if you're going to listen to one of them. Listen to Blackbird over Jolene. Jolene's okay and it's fun, but Blackbird was beautiful. And I have listened to the entire album, Tim, on Spotify today, and it's pretty good.
Okay.
I will say she did a good job with it. I'm not, like I said, I was just curious, and I can't tell you a whole lot about it because I just kind of listened to it in passing while I was working. But from what I heard, it sounded pretty good.
Excellent.
So there you go. And some people were talking about one thing they're hoping that the Beyonce album does, and I don't know if it will or not, but they're hoping that it'll shine a spotlight on African-American or Black country musicians.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not aware of many. I mean, there was a rap artist called Cowboy Troy. I do know that because Cowboy Troy did a personal appearance at Cowboy Up, the bar in West Virginia that I used to play music at with my last band.
The only person I think of is I think of Darius Rucker for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, he sort of went country, I think, probably more for commercial reasons.
Well, and I will say there's Charlie Pride. I guess if you got it, I think Ray Charles did a few country songs. Tina Turner even did one or two. And you might say things like some of her music could range on the countryside. And there's probably some obvious person that me and Tim are missing and someone's screaming at us right now. But I think Charlie Pride is the first person that comes to mind for me.
There we are. I mean, as you know, country music is banned in my house. I can't anything with a banjo and it goes, I lost my truck. And then it's like, shut it down. I will say,
I think I've banned Darius Rucker's country for my house. Not against that. I can't. I'm sorry. I love Hootie and the Blowfish, but me and Darius Rucker as a country star, it's a hard pass.
Well, as you know, I've been to Columbia, South Carolina. They have a Hootie and the Blowfish art installation on Hootie and the Blowfish Boulevard, I think it is.
Yeah, if he wants to sing like I Go Blind, I'm fine with it. But when he starts bringing out, what's that song he did the remake of, Tim? The one you hate that you said if you ever play again, you're going to lose.
Oh,
you're going to jump out a window.
Wheel.
His version of Wagon Wheel makes my eye want to pop out. Yeah. Anyway, moving along. Let's talk less about the things I hate. I'm already on the list somewhere. Somebody already doesn't like me.
Okay, so this is just one music news item from me. This week, Joni Mitchell is back on Spotify.
Oh, yeah. You were saying she took her music off.
Yeah, so she pulled her music in solidarity with Neil Young. And Neil Young was not very happy about a podcast host that Spotify was bankrolling. And, you know, Neil Young is somebody who protests. He's always been very socially active. And for Neil Young to make a stand and pull music from a platform, that is, you know, completely standard behavior for Neil Young. And Joni Mitchell, sort of in solidarity to that, pulled her music from Spotify too. But as we know, Neil Young is back on Spotify. And as a result, Joni Mitchell is back on Spotify.
Well, now we can go listen to Big Yellow Taxi in peace.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when I was doing the 1001 Albums Challenge with our listener, Megan, there are a bunch of Neil Young albums and a bunch of Joni Mitchell albums, and I had to pull them up on YouTube. But now I don't have to do that if there's any more.
That's like the biggest first world problem I've ever heard. I had to click from Spotify into YouTube.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough, let me tell you.
Like somebody out there is like, really? Anyway, that was funny. All right. Well, I'm happy to hear that.
But there we are. But yeah, they're back. I've had to click through the catalog. I mean, there's some great stuff from Joni Mitchell.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I like her, and I like her sound. Her voice is just very Joni Mitchell. Like it's very distinct and it's very pretty and it works so well for folk music as a whole.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So let's get into the topic. Now it's my topic this week. Joy doesn't know what it's going to be. And we've done a bunch of these sort of episodes where I think one a few weeks ago, it was like every 5 years in the Billboard chart and things like that. And we've done sort of various dates in history on the Billboard chart or the UK singles chart.
That might be when we're running out of ideas.
Joy, anyway. we will never run out of ideas. It's the ideas are limitless. That's why you have a music podcast. If you've got a steam train podcast, there's going to be a point where you run out of stuff. But like music podcast is infinite.
Fair enough. All right, Tim. So what are we talking about?
Okay. So I decided to go with a date in history for the singles chart. And I thought, well, let's have a look at the Billboard Hot 100 and look at the UK singles chart at the same time. And now the particular date in history is a pretty important date. And I think it's probably one that most of our listeners would be aware of. Okay. And that's July the 14th, 1990.
Of course, everybody knows that date. It is one of the greatest dates in the history of the world. And it's my birthday, of course, everybody.
Yeah. And maybe I had to send a message to your sister to confirm both your birthdays because I wasn't quite sure what it was.
Well, to be fair, I do have a twin sister, so she does in fact share this birthday with me. As soon as you said it, I was like, it's going to be my birthday, isn't it?
So, so
Fair
I've
enough.
got both the charts here, and I thought what I would do. Let's go sort of from 10 to number one, but I'll
All
read them
right.
both out at the same time, and I'll be interested to know whether you know the song, whether I know the song. Now, I had a quick listen to some of the songs I didn't know, and some of them were actually first listens for me, especially on the US chart. But we'll go through.
All
So,
right.
so let's start with number 10. And as again, July 14th, 1990. And at number 10 in the UK official singles charts is World in Motion by England football team and New Order.
I've heard that only because you guys have talked about New Order
Yeah.
before.
And then for the Billboard Hot 100 at number 10, we have Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe.
Okay, I'm very familiar with Belle DeVoe. And it's funny because we were watching The Masked Singer the other day, and one of the people named a character. Well, they were like, I think it's one of the members of Belle DeVoe, and he goes, "Why do you think it's that specific member?" And the judge is like, "I'm not sure." He goes, "Of all the members of the band, that's the one you picked." But Poison was a huge song. I still, like I said, I can't hear it without thinking about the Glee when they did their version of it. Now, the New World Order England thing, I'm guessing that was for like that was for you got, well, I'm going to call it soccer, but you're going to call it football for those English. It was like the theme song or something for soccer.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. I think it was the World Cup. I think 1990 was a World
Oh,
Cup
yeah,
year.
kind of like how those songs always chart. Okay, I know what
Yeah,
you're
so it was a
saying.
novelty hit, but unlike most of these novelty hits in history, which were kind of poor, this one they had New Order, which was an established
Yeah.
band doing this thing, and there's a very famous rap in it, and I think the soccer player's name is John Barnes. I think. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, soccer fans. I know nothing about soccer. I have no interest in it, but I think that's who does the rap in the middle of it. But
Brandon?
it was very famous at the time, and I think it may have gone to yeah, it did actually. I'm looking here; it peaked at number one.
Yeah, because I know like Cup of Life was written for the FIFA World Cup, like the Ricky Martin song. Then you had Shakira's song she did for Africa. I don't know. There's been a few songs that have charted in America as well that were for the FIFA World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I will say, Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison, which is hard to say on a Friday night, I will tell
It
you
really
that.
is. I know. I'm like, I don't, it's hard for me to say any day, Tim.
That's a song I had not heard before, and I had to pull that
You,
one up on the Spotify before I knew how it
wow.
went.
I'm surprised because you do know who they are, but I guess I didn't think about it. I thought that was one of the more famous songs. I learned something new every day, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of on the cusp of where I was maybe not getting into music, but I mean, well, contemporary music, should I say. But mind you, I suppose I was 90, still at school, probably. I mean, we would have had the radio in the car when my
Yeah.
parents were driving, but maybe it just wasn't a UK hit.
That's kind of what I'm thinking because I don't know how big of a band they were internationally. I mean, and to be fair, in America, they were popular, but it was only like for 5 years. You know what I mean, Ted? They were there for like 4 to 5 years and they were gone.
Well, there we are. Well, I can tell you that Poison peaked at number three.
Huh? There we go.
Well, there we are. All right. Well, let's count down to number nine. So number nine on the UK chart is "Oops Up" by the band Snap.
Are
And
you speaking English?
yes,
Okay. I definitely have not heard that one on American charts.
and then interestingly, on the Billboard Hot 100, it was Snap again, but the song "The Power."
I've never heard what do you think is a band that if I heard them, I would know I've heard them, Tim, or is it very niche?
I think you may have heard. I've got the power.
Oh, yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah,
But only like used kind of in like movies and stuff.
yeah, I think it was in a UK commercial, which it sort of lived on long after it had its hit. I mean, it only went to number 9 on the Billboard chart, but it was certainly was around in the UK. But as I said, "Oops Up" was the hit, number 9 on the UK chart.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've heard Oops Up because they were one of those like bands that had like girls singing in the background type. You know what I mean? Probably people dancing up front type. That's what I imagine. Very almost like technologically technotronic, whatever they call them. You know what I'm saying?
Techno. There's no limits. That's technotronic. Techno.
Yeah, they're kind of like a mix of that and dance music to me. I know what you're talking about, though. Okay, but yeah, I wouldn't know that that band was named Snap. And when Tim first said that, I didn't think he was speaking English. So that tells you how much I know about them.
You mean to say you didn't have a Snap CD?
No, I did not. But I will say when Tim said number 9, it was his best Casey Kasem like impression I've ever heard. Number 9 on the Billboard chart was.
Yeah, and on with the countdown.
It's exactly how it sounded when you did that. All right, well, what's number 8, Tim?
Okay, number 8 on the UK singles chart is the Stone Roses with One Love. And then number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 is Depeche Mode, Enjoy the Silence.
Okay, well, I definitely know Depeche Mode, Enjoy the Silence. The only thing I can think of, One Love, when I hear that is One Love, One Heart, but I don't think that's the right song.
No, it's a completely different song. Are you aware anything about the Stone Roses?
No, I don't think so.
They were sort of indie rock, I suppose. Kind of Oasis-y, sort of, but it was more indie rock. And there was a lot of bands at the time that come from Manchester, and they used to call it Madchester.
Of course. That makes me think of the Cheshire Cat for some reason, but I don't know why. I guess Mad Hatter, maybe it's what my brain was thinking. I don't think that's related, but anyway. So this type of indie music came out of Manchester. It's random. I don't know why, but I don't think about Manchester and think about indie music.
No, I mean I've been to Manchester. I
just think it's soccer.
Yeah, I've stayed in Manchester. I stayed with a friend in Manchester one time, and I took Hannah to the Hard Rock in Manchester. I don't know if the Hard Rock is still there, but they had a Hard Rock there. And we went to the Hard Rock in Manchester, and then they played a Velvet Revolver video of Sucker Train Blues. And neither of us had ever seen that video before, and it was very exciting.
That's the memory that sticks out to you.
Yeah,
I don't know, when I hear it, I just think Manchester United. That's all I got.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm interested to know whether the Hard Rock in Manchester is still there. Let's have a look.
He's giving a goog.
There we are. Hard Rock Manchester. Yeah, it's still there. Opens,
a lot of them have shut down.
Yeah, it's at the Printworks, and it opens at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning on Saturday.
Well, what time is it there right now for them? It's pretty late.
Well, it's 8:01 p.m., so it's actually 4 hours ahead.
See, I always get confused because I messed this up one time when I was doing a Zoom with the time because they change their clocks at different times than we do. Yeah, and so sometimes we're like 4 and sometimes we're like 5. Yeah.
Yeah, weird. They're doing it this coming weekend. So we've been on a 4-hour difference. And then after the weekend, they're going to move the clocks and then it will be a 5-hour difference. Now, a pro tip for people who are working across time zones, whether it be friends or professionally, just go in Google, what time is it in London now? And it will tell you. What time is it in Johannesburg, South Africa? There you go. It'll tell you straight away.
And there's a world clock on almost every computer nowadays.
Well, that's true. But I mean, if you wanted it really quick, I mean,
I Google it too.
I sometimes still get confused about the fact that there's a 3-hour time difference between the West Coast and the East Coast. And sometimes we have vendors that we use at work who are out on the West Coast and they want to schedule meetings and they don't work an East Coast schedule. They work a West Coast schedule. And then they'll say, oh, can you meet at 10? And I go, what time is it in Los Angeles? And you're like, oh, right, there you go.
Yeah, the ones that get me are Alaska and Hawaii. I'm pretty good with the West Coast because I know that's Pacific. And then weirdly enough, Arizona is the only state that doesn't do daylight savings time. I don't know if you knew that or not. And then you've got Mountain, which is 2 hours behind us. Then Central, which is 1 hour behind us. Then you have us as, Eastern. But what gets me is like Juneau, Alaska. Like if you Google Juneau, Alaska, what time it is? Like, well, I guess all of Alaska. They're like it'd be like 4 p.m. there right now.
Yeah, it's incredibly confusing. And then when you think about Australia, they're like 2 days in the future. I mean, it's mind blowing.
And I never quite understood. I don't know the concept of that's one of those things that the concept kind of blows my mind, Tim. Like I don't. And like in Hawaii right now, it's 2 o'clock, Tim, 2 p.m. Like, how does that make sense? Because I remember there are 4 and 6 hour differences. It's half the time we're closer to the UK than we are to Hawaii in time.
Yeah, well,
The other way, but
Hawaii is basically Japan anyway.
I mean, that is true. It is true. We hire a lot of people at my work in the Philippines, and they're exactly 12 hours different. So if it's 8 p.m. here, it's 8 a.m. there.
Interesting.
And unless the daylight savings happens, and then sometimes it's like 11 hours or 13 hours, but generally it's 12 hours.
You know what? Everyone should adopt UTC, Universal Time. And then you would just have to work out that everyone's on the same time, but like you would start work at 3 a.m., but really it would be 9 a.m. Or would that just be too confusing?
I don't know. But the weirdest thing that happened to me, and I don't know if Tim has ever experienced this, is I lived in Utah for about 3 years with my husband when he decided he wanted to go back and see his family. Charlie had a pretty hard childhood. I won't get into details. And he wanted to go back and see his family, and it's been a long time, so I went with him. And I knew that the reason some of this happens is the sun, the way the sun rises and the way it sets.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it did not, it did not really dawn on me how far west I was until it was the summertime and the sun was still out at 10:30 at night.
I know.
And it looked like 1 p.m.
As I've said to you before, I've been on the west coast of Sweden during the middle of summer, and it didn't get dark until 10 to midnight. It was like the middle of the afternoon at 11:45 p.m. And then in like 10 or 15 minutes as you caught up to midnight, even by midnight, it just looked a bit like dusk. And then when it just got after midnight, it was pitch black. But it is the wackiest thing ever.
It just like threw me off. We would be like, because it was like when we first moved out there, it was close to summertime, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like looking at the clock, it's like 10:40 p.m. But I'm looking outside because in my brain, in my East Coast brain, I'm like, it's 2 p.m. And I look down, it's 10:40 p.m. at night. I'm like, what is happening? Like, I get it, but I didn't get it until I really saw it, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Very confusing. Anyway, and on with the countdown.
Nothing to do with music. All right, what's next?
Okay, so number 7 on the UK singles chart, we have MC Hammer, and you can't touch this.
I am familiar with that one, and I know every word to it.
Okay, and then number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, you have Johnny Gill and Rub You the Right Way.
I know that song, but it's not a favorite.
No, I'd never heard that song before. I had to pull that one up, and I was like, oh, that's how it goes. I mean, instantly not memorable.
Yeah, that's probably, I've heard it on the radio and stuff, and I know the name. Now, MC Hammer, You Can't Touch This, goes into my list of I know all the words to it. I could rap it straight through right now. I'm not going to do it because we don't want to copyright, and people would probably shut off their thing.
Yeah, then press that little 15-second skip thing you get on Spotify. Like normally when you listen to commercial, well, I say commercial, we're a commercial podcast, if you like. I mean, we don't really make any money, but we're a podcast that's out there. But like you're listening to a podcast that has lots of ads on it, you press that 15-second button just to skim through them.
That's what they would do with my rap. And I can't even say I would blame them. I'd probably go back and play this back and be like, it'd just be like my eye cringing the entire time I listen to it. But yes, I'm surprised that was I don't know that I've ever really thought about how popular MC Hammer was in the UK.
Well, it only went to number 6, You Can't Touch This. But I mean, it did start this whole generational thing of hammer pants and hammer time. And
it is true. And doing that little dance back and forth with your legs.
Exactly. And I know he had some other hits. Didn't he do the theme tune to the Addams Family?
Oh, yes, he did. You are correct on that. God, I haven't thought about that in a long time. But he did a version, and then he did the too legit. Dang it, I can't say it. Too legit to quit. That was him. And I'm sure there's something else out there. But that's all I can think of. And for those of you guys, because you can't see this, and this is an audio podcast, I was making my fingers dance like MC Hammer while singing that.
I tell you, it was a moment in time, ladies and gentlemen. You wish this was a video podcast. You really would.
Some days I'm like, we have to do a live episode. I keep saying we're going to, and I get messages from like Phil Reese and people saying we have to. So at some point in time, but we need to like plan it out in the future and give people like far advance. Because what happened the last time we tried to do it, and everybody was out having fun, and me and Tim were the only people at home. And there ended up being like 5 of us tops on the video.
we will figure it out.
All right. Now that everybody heard their version of MC Hammer, what's next?
Okay, so number 6 on the UK singles chart, it's Roxette. It Must Have Been Love.
Okay, very familiar, of course.
Yep. And oh, look at this. Number 6 on the Billboard chart, Roxette. It Must Have Been Love. Look at that. Number 6 on both the charts.
Well, Roxette had universal appeal, apparently.
Well, in the UK, that song only went to number 3, and on the Billboard Hot 100, it went to number 1.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's a pretty popular song. Now, Roxette is one of those bands because they're Swedish, kind of. Some people would say they're pop. They're kind of rocky, whatever you want to call them.
Power pop, Swedish power pop.
I guess that would be the best way to describe it. The girl always had shorter hair than the guy.
Yep.
In every video you see of them. And I mean, Listen to Your Heart was a big hit. It Must Have Been Love. And of course, I've heard they're probably, I mean, after ABBA, they're probably one of the top selling Swedish groups, I would imagine. And the question, though, is are they, like, I don't know if they're still out there doing it, Tim. Do you know?
Well, sadly, we lost the singer Marie. I forget her last name. Yeah, we lost her a few years ago. It was very sad. She was very young. And Per, whatever the chap's name, he was making pop music in Swedish around the early 2000s. I know I was traveling to Sweden a lot at that time, and it was big news that he was making pop music, especially for the Swedish market in Swedish, because normally Swedes making Swedish pop music for the Swedish market sing in English.
Money do they have in Swedish? In Sweden, I guess. What money do they use?
They use the krona, the Swedish krona.
Okay, I think that was completely random. It had nothing to do with what Tim was saying, but I just realized that I don't know what money they use in Sweden.
Well, there was they had a referendum a number of years ago about whether they wanted to go into the euro, and they decided that they didn't want to go into the euro, and they wanted to stay with the Swedish krona. And then I think there's a Norwegian krona, and then there's a Danish krona as well, I think. But certainly Swedish is the krona.
See, that's one of my biggest interests. I think if I go to a kind of a new place in the near future, I want to go to like the Netherlands or something of that nature, because that's one that I haven't really done. I've done different places in Europe. I haven't done I would love to do Amsterdam. That'd probably be my favorite one I'd go to. And then, of course, Asia is one that I haven't been to. Have you ever been to any other continents, Tim?
Well, I've been to where did you just say?
Asia? The Netherlands?
Yeah, I have been to the Netherlands. I've been to Nijmegen, and I've also driven through Netherlands many times. But yeah, I've been to Singapore. But when I say I've been to Singapore, I've set foot in Singapore. I've used the lavatory in Singapore.
Did you go to the airport?
Yeah, I mean, like I flew from Heathrow to Singapore. Me and my uncle got out of the plane. They're very strict on smoking in Singapore. Like smoking in public places is prohibited, and smoking in a building, you have to be in a very specific smoking area. And apparently, if you walk up to the smoking area in an airport, which is typically like half inside, half outside, if you're walking up to the door and you put the cigarette in your mouth ready to go, they will arrest you. They're very keen on that kind of stuff.
Because they're into cleanliness. They're big on
and also
clean.
chewing gum is banned in Singapore as well.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like me when I say I've been to Germany, Tim. I've been in the airport multiple times. Well, I landed in Munich.
Well, when we went to Singapore, we got out of the plane, and then my uncle had done that trip many times. So we got out, and it was however long it takes them to refuel. I can't remember, but we got out, went through the gate, and then legged it all the way to the other end of the airport where the smoking room was. And then we went into this smoking room, and it was like a half inside, half outside thing, and you could just see the airport and the planes and stuff like that. I remember it being incredibly humid, and my uncle, who was a smoker at the time, I don't know if he's still a smoker, but he was a smoker at the time. He smoked chain smoked 3 cigarettes, one after the other. And then we looked at our clocks, right, got to be back, and then we legged it back through the airport, got back on the plane, and then we went to Perth.
I mean, I was wondering is when you went to Australia, because I know a lot of times people stop in like, you know what I mean, some of the Asian countries when they're going to Australia. So
Yeah,
that
if you
makes
if you go
sense.
from England, I mean, you can go the other way around. You can stop in Los Angeles, but the British Airways flight that I took at the time was Heathrow to Singapore and then Singapore to Perth.
I only know that because I was watching a video about a woman the other day who was flying. She stopped in an Asian country when they were on their way to Australia. I
Yeah,
don't know that off the top of my head.
I think they also sometimes stop in Hong Kong as well. I don't
I
know.
can't remember exactly where, but for some reason, I always end up immune. Anytime I fly, and probably Tim would know this. The four times I flew out of Charlotte, I've taken Lufthansa. It's always
Hmm.
Lufthansa, which is the German airline. I don't know why if that's like just the biggest one or the cheapest one or whatever, but that always seems to be what I get on. And I
Hmm.
find it ironic because they start talking, and I swear to you, I mark my words on this. They are leaving out information when they do the English part.
Okay.
Because the pilot will rattle on for what feels like 30 minutes in German, and then they'll be like, buckle up, American. I would be like, if anything happens, I have no idea.
Well, the thing is, you have to remember the German language. They have these
I
things called
know.
they have these things called compound nouns, where it's like lots of words all put together, and these words are super long.
Yeah, I know, but it was just funny because you would hear like 40 minutes of him going on and on. And we hit, like I said, the first time I flew, the literal first time I flew over the ocean, we hit a really big air pocket and the
Hmm.
plane free falled and people were screaming. And the German pilot was telling us stuff, and I don't even. And his accent was very heavy too. So when he would go into English, sometimes I wouldn't even know he was speaking in English. I was like, Mom, I was like looking at. No, that was with Brady. I was looking at Brady, going, "If we go, we're going because we're not going to know." But got there safely. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I've had the same thing on an Air France flight. I've been on a few Air France flights, but it's the same thing when like the captain comes on and he spills off in French, and it goes on and on and on and on and on, and then like you say, it gets to the English person, it's like, ladies and gentlemen, the flight time today is 3 hours. Thank you.
you're like, I think I'm missing something because I flew Air France once, and that was a small plane because we were coming from I think that's when we flew out of France because I flew out of France to Germany, Tim, and
Hmm.
then in Germany we got on Lufthansa to come back to Charlotte. But it was a small plane. That was the most comfortable plane though that we flew on the entire time.
Hmm.
The airplane plane was beautiful, and if he was talking, I think I was so exhausted because I had just spent 2 weeks of my life traveling all over Europe, walking thousands of miles, what felt like thousands of miles, and then I got sick on the plane ride home and was sick for like a week when I got home because I got travelers, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
It'll get you, Tim. It'll get you. I still don't know if it was the airplane food though.
You know what it is? It's the water. If you
Yeah,
do, not even if the water is clean and pure, because where if you travel to a different
different
country,
bacteria.
yeah, the bacteria and the consistency of the water is different. And whenever you travel somewhere, if you drink any of the water, it's always a bit weird on your system.
Well, I knew that, and they always say, stick the bottled water, stick the bottled water, stick the bottled water. But one night when we were right, because when we were in France, and Tim will tell you this because they don't believe in air conditioners. It was a
No.
1,000 degrees in our hotel room, and it had been 1,000 degrees. And I got up and I was so hot. I think I went and got like a glass of water, not thinking about it at 3 a.m. and I drank it from the sink. And that was like the last night we were there. So I think that's what did me in, Tim.
There we are. That's what it was. That's what got you.
And then I always worry when they give you the pitcher of water on your table, like they do in Greece and stuff, Tim. Where does that pitcher of water come from? I have to wonder if it's coming from the sink.
It's coming from the sickle. Yeah, some kind of tap or something.
Because I'm pretty sure in Greece they got me one time and I poured it from the cup into my cup. So got me. Anyway. All right. Not that this is a water pollution bacteria podcast.
Okay, so here we go. Back to the chart. So number 5 on July 14th, 1990, on the UK official singles charts, novelty hit alert. This is Thunderbirds Are Go, FAB featuring MC Parker.
Is that from the Thunderbolts that go like the movie, like the TV show or whatever?
Yeah, it's from the TV show, the Jerry Anderson TV show Thunderbirds.
Okay,
Which
I am familiar with that.
with
Yes.
the little marionettes that I'm doing a thing on the screen that Joy can see that makes no sense for an audio podcast, but she's understanding
course.
where I'm coming from with that.
Yes, okay, I know what that is. Not that I would have expected it to make it onto the charts, but anyway.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks on the chart, and this was its peak position of number 5.
Interesting.
And on number 5 in the Billboard Hot 100 is Billy Idol's Cradle of Love.
Well, I've definitely heard that song. When I think of Billy Idol, I always think about this one time in high school. I had this, our math teacher was also the person who always DJ'd everything. And everybody thought I remember people being like, she's such a good DJ. And so I'm like, Tim, she wasn't a DJ. She just knew how to press play on the music and had the equipment. Looking back, I realized that was kind of a little bit of a, but on Friday, she would let us do music trivia in class for some extra bonus points, just to make Fridays fun for the first 5-10 minutes of class. And it was Billy Idol came on, and I was the only person who raised my hand and answered it. And she was like, oh, and she almost wanted to say a word I can't say on the podcast. And then she went, heck yes. That's the only person who got it. But she was like, I guess she had did that a few different times and nobody else had gotten Billy Idol. My music knowledge came in strong with that one. So I was thinking that. I also won a thing at school once where they had music. It was like a music question that got everybody a bonus on my team, and everybody was super excited. And it was To Be With You, Mr. Big. And I still distinctly have an image of this cheerleader. I will not say her name in case she happens to listen to my podcast now, though it seems very unlikely, looking at her friend and going, who's Mr. Big? But anyway, that's what I think of when I think of Billy Idol.
There we are. But have you ever heard FAB featuring MC Parker?
Probably, maybe. I know what the show is.
Yeah, if you imagine like the Thunderbirds theme tune, but with a kind of early 90s hip hop rap type sound to it, and that's what you get.
It's just so weird. I mean, I might have heard it, but I just kind of know what the Thunderbirds are a go thing is.
Yeah, Thunderbirds are go!
Ooh, that's all I know. Outside of that, no. And it's weird to me that charted.
Yeah, well, maybe 1990 was where novelty hits were coming to their sort of a natural end.
Yeah, I guess. Or there were just a lot of people into Thunderbirds. I'm not sure.
Who can honestly say what was going on in July 1990? I mean, who knows?
It was a cool time, though. It was a cool time.
Apparently so. All right.
All right. What's next?
Well, let's move to number 4. And let's go to the singles charts of July 14th, 1990. Number 4, again, is another novelty hit. And this is from our friends Partners in Crime, spelled Kryme. And this is the song Turtle Power.
Like from the Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme tune from the film. And then on the Billboard Hot 100, we have Taylor Dayne's I'll Be Your Shelter.
I am familiar with that song too, but okay, UK had some weird stuff going on in 1990. You mean to tell me that the Thunderbird song and the Ninja Turtle song were what was trending at the moment?
Yeah, that was at number 4, and that peaked at number 4 as well. Interesting fact about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When we had the cartoon originally, they were Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, not Ninja Turtles. Because it was deemed that they should be heroes, not ninjas. And then when the film came out, that was Ninja Turtles. And then when the song came out, this was Ninja Turtles. But some of the early turtle stuff, they were heroes, not ninjas.
Well, to be fair, in the song, it does say, oh no, it says turtles in a half shell. I almost thought it said heroes. Does it say heroes in a half shell?
Yeah, it says heroes in a half shell.
Yeah, it says heroes in a half, yeah.
But there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. So did they change it to hero?
No, it was pure ninja.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it definitely says heroes in a half shell, turtle power. So I mean, they were heroes. And okay, here's a question, Tim. Which is your favorite Ninja Turtle? Do you have a favorite?
I have no preference.
I'm Team Michelangelo.
I was just going to say Donatello because that's one I've heard of.
That's Charlie's favorite. Sometimes he's Leonardo, sometimes he's Donatello.
And there's another one called Kevin.
There is?
No, I've made that up.
I was like, no, there isn't. They're all named. I was just telling. So you know they're named after Renaissance artists, right, Tim? That's
Sure.
kind of the reference. I was just talking to Charlie though. I think it's funny that my generation, if you were starting to name off like Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, we would instantly think you were talking about the Ninja Turtles, not the Renaissance artists. Like in my core being, if you say Donatello, Michelangelo, like Leonardo, or Raphael, I think Ninja Turtles, but like if you go a generation before me, they'd probably think you were talking about the Renaissance artist. But like, it's just weird because that has become so synonymous in my brain that I don't even think about how it's literally Renaissance. I mean, Michelangelo is a pretty famous Renaissance artist, but.
Sure, but yeah, you're right. There's probably a whole generation of people, when you say that to them, the first thing they go to is Ninja Turtles.
Me. It's me. I am generation. Like, and I mean, if you ever watched it, I don't know how much you've watched the Ninja Turtles, Tim, but I'm totally Michelangelo. I love Mikey. He's right up my alley. He's loud. He's silly. He eats a lot of pizza.
Yeah, because I'm like Garfield, who is lasagna. They were pizza centric.
They were pizza centric. I mean, I do love a good pizza. Let's be honest, Tim.
Oh, I had some pizza at work the other day. It was delicious.
Now, the pizza I dream of, speaking of pizza, is when I was in France, I got a pizza with a bechamel sauce on it, Tim, the white sauce. I've never gotten it anywhere else. Still think about that pizza to this day.
Yeah, I had a delicious pizza in Angelo's Pizza, which is the pizza restaurant above where the David Letterman Ed Sullivan Theatre was, and the actual dining area is up, and it looked over the canopy. Now Stephen Colbert has that show, but I'm sure it's still the same because Angelo's is still there. And it was one of those super thin New York pizzas, but it was massive.
I mean,
and it was delicious.
And now we're making all of our listeners hungry.
There we are.
Too bad we don't have like a HelloFresh ad put in there right now. We'd be making bank off of that too.
I'll do an ad for Angelo's Pizza in New York City on Broadway. I mean, if they want to, if they want to FedEx us a pizza, I'll do it for them. It's fine.
I don't know how many random pizza places in France that listen to us that make bechamel pizzas. That's very niche and oddly specific. I forgot what songs we were even talking about.
Okay. Well, let's move to the next one. All right, so we're heading into the top three now. So number 3 on the UK chart of July 14th, 1990. This is Luciano Pavarotti. I think that's how you say his first name. And the song Nessun Dorma.
Is he like an Italian opera singer?
Yes. And then on the Billboard Hot 100 is Hold On by En Vogue.
Okay, well, I know Hold On by En Vogue, and I think that the Italian opera singer you mentioned is one of the songs Charlie listens to.
Yeah, I think, again, there's a soccer tie-in here. I think it was a soccer commercial or TV coverage or something, and they used that as incidental music, and then it ended up being on the chart. So really, in effect, you have 3 novelty hits in a row on the UK chart.
Huh. I mean, yeah. Well, and you know what's funny about you said En Vogue? So the song Hold On by En Vogue, I'm very familiar with. I'm very familiar with the band En Vogue. But I was watching a little documentary on the Spice Girls the other day. And it was super interesting. It went through the history of, like, you know, how they got together, how they stole their music. And she said she brought them out in her knickers. They sold their master tapes and went on their own because the 2 guys were holding them hostage but not giving them a contract. But they were like quoting themselves and they're like, you know, we don't think this is when they were younger, early 90s. So right around, you know, they came at 95, 96, I think is when they became popular in the US. They're like, we're not like an En Vogue or anything, which I thought was funny because now looking back, they're much more high selling and higher grossing and more known than En Vogue. It's such an interesting statement to see in that moment, but now they're like the highest selling girl group of all time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Besides the Andrews sisters.
It's interesting how sort of history sort of sorts all that stuff out.
Yeah, but I guess it says, I mean, they liked En Vogue. They said very good things about it. And the singers in En Vogue are gorgeous singers. Like, they sound amazing. Their harmonies are good. I mean, if you want to take it on singing ability, obviously I would say En Vogue probably had better singing ability than some of the Spice Girls. But on popularity and sales and hits, they took it. It just was really funny to hear them say that and then think about how they probably think about it looking back.
Exactly. There we go. All right. Well, let's move into number 2. So number 2 on the UK singles chart is Mona, which is a cover by Craig McLachlan and Check 1 2. Craig McLachlan being an actor from Neighbours, Australian gentleman.
Okay.
And number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 was Glenn Medeiros featuring Bobby Brown with the song She Ain't Worth It.
Well, I'm familiar with that song mostly because of Bobby Brown, but I had no idea what the words you said were for the UK track. Those set of, I mean, you've talked about that TV show before, Neighbours, right?
Yeah, Neighbours is a classic Australian soap opera. It's where we got Kylie. It's where we got
Yeah.
Jason Donovan. It's where we got Stephen Dennis. There was all these like pop stars that came out
I feel
of
like I need to
Neighbours.
go back and watch this show.
Yeah, and they had the final episode of Neighbours recently, and it's been running for 30, 40 years
It's
or
one of
something
those
like
long
that.
soap operas.
Yeah, and then they decided to wind it up. But I remember it was on before the 6 o'clock news, and everyone at school used to watch Neighbours. It was big news, and there was Neighbours, and there was another one called Home and Away. But Neighbours was always the most popular one. But I said there's a lot of these pop stars all came out of Neighbours. But yeah, Craig McLachlan was someone else who was also in Neighbours, who ended up having a much smaller pop career, certainly in the UK.
So why were pop stars being brought into the show, or was it just kind of random that they happened to all be pop stars? Like, was it about music in a way?
No, it was people who lived in this neighborhood, and I really should know the area that it's in, but it escapes me. And our Australian listeners are like, how can you forget that? But in fact, I'm going to look it up. Where was Where was it?
It's just kind of random that many pop stars came out of one show. Let's see what he
Neighbours
finds.
is set in the fictional town of Erinsborough, Melbourne, and comprises Ramsay Street. Oh, that's it, Ramsay Street.
Okay. I mean, I could have guessed based off the title that it was about a neighborhood. I just thought it was random that many pop stars came out of one TV show.
Yeah, it seemed to me it was relentless at one point.
Maybe they were all friends and they all just happened to be good singers and then they went on a show together. I don't know.
Well, when you're good neighbours, you become good friends.
It's true. Well, and there is something to be said about, and a lot of people talk about, like a lot of artists will sing, a lot of people who are on TV will be singers, and a lot of singers will be TV show people, or I guess I should say actors. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. But a lot of times when you're studying to be a singer or you're studying to be an actor, those things go hand in hand. So they're trained in, like the classic three threat or whatever. So people who are trained to be actors usually train in music too. And when you train in music, you train in acting. It kind of goes back and forth. So I think that's why generally you get a lot of people who are good at both. Or like some people think they're good at both and maybe they're not. They shine on one of them. You know what I mean? One's a better thing. But there are a few people, like, for example, Queen Latifah. She's a wonderful actress and she can sing like anything. She's got a great big voice. That's an example of someone that I imagine trained in both things. Of course, she says she started in the church, which I think that's like that. I feel like 75% of musicians say they got their start in the church.
It seems to be. There's certainly a lot of people who got their start that way.
But anyway, not that that's anything to do with In Vogue or whatever the other thing Tim said was. This episode's off the Richter scales. All right, what's number 2?
Okay, well, that was number 2.
Oh, what's number 1?
All right, so we're now moving into number 1 on July the 14th, 1990.
All
okay,
right.
so on the UK singles charts,
You say like Barney theme song. I'm going to jump out the window.
Yes, Mr. Blobby. No, it's not really. It's number 1 is Elton John and Sacrifice.
Okay, good choice.
And then on the Billboard Hot 100, we have New Kids on the Block with Step by Step.
That is not shocking at all that was number 1 in 1990, because as we know, the early 90s dominated, and this was pretty early for boy bands. Step by Step, New Kids on the Block were probably, they were the predecessors to NSYNC and Backstreet Boys in America.
Yeah.
So that makes complete sense. But I thought for sure Tim was going to tell me that it was the Barney theme song or some show that sounds like a candy in the UK. It's just weird to me how many of the hits on the UK side were just so, like, I wasn't expecting the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle to be that popular in 1990 in the UK.
There was lots of novelty hits in the UK in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, are you familiar with the Star Trekking by The Firm?
Yeah.
That was one of them. The Miami Vice theme tune was in the top 10. I mean, there's no one quite like Grandma novelty hit. It could go on. I mean, we should do a novelty hits episode, but the problem with doing that is you really have to play them because some of them are reasonably obscure. Yeah.
And I'd probably just be staring at Tim half the time going, what are you talking about?
Like Renee and Renata's Shut Up in Your Face, for example. Classic.
All right. Well, I'll take your word for it. My question is the UK really that big into TV? Is that what it is? It's like TV like so huge in the UK, or
I
it
mean,
just
it's as big as any other developed country, I suppose. I mean,
okay.
certainly in the 80s and 90s, satellite
Yeah.
and cable TV probably didn't exist. I mean, it was at the very late tail end of the 80s that we got Sky TV, and that was with mostly with satellite dishes. So some new towns, like
Yeah,
where
I
my
had
aunt
satellite
lived,
when I was younger.
yeah, some new towns would have cable, but even if you had satellite TV in the late 90s, sorry, late 80s, early 90s, there would probably only be 10 channels or something, or 16 channels. It was very limited to the kind of TV that you get now. But the thing is, you have to remember is that prior to that, there was only 4 TV channels.
That's
I
true.
think we got channel 4 in 81 or 82, so it was 4 TV channels. So unlike now where media is so diluted, nobody's watching broadcast TV. They're streaming, they're YouTubing, they're watching a DVD box set. It's so the landscape is so diluted. If you want to spend your evening with somebody talking about, I don't know, model aircraft for 4 hours, there's 1,000 YouTube videos that will show you that. So you don't have to put on BBC Two at 9 p.m. because everything is available to you. But back then the choices were limited, so people like watching TV. So a lot of these shows become so iconic because they have
Because
this
there's the only
huge,
thing to watch.
yeah, the huge audience. And then the next day with your friends at school, or the next day with the people at work, or even just talking to your family, everyone would have seen Coronation Street. Everyone would have seen Neighbours. Everyone would have seen News at 10.
Yeah.
Everyone would have seen Panorama, or whatever the show was.
And it was the same thing in America. Did the TV, but here's the question. Did your TV go off at like 10 or 11 p.m. at night and have that weird screen on it, Tim?
Yes, absolutely. So traditionally, TV didn't start until lunchtime. It was just before lunchtime. Sometimes there was schools programming on BBC in the morning, which, either you would watch them at school or they would record it on a videotape and you'd watch it later at school. It was all like educational programming. But yeah, the TV would run till about midnight or just after.
Okay.
And then BBC TV would then play the national anthem.
Did that in America too.
Yeah. And then it would go to a test card. And then it would be that same test card the whole night until TV started up at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I remember when UK breakfast TV started. I think BBC got it first, and then there was TVAM on the independent TV channels, and that was a huge thing. That TV was going to be on at 6 o'clock in the morning.
I think it was a little bit earlier in the US. Obviously, I was born in 1990, but I mean, I've heard people talk about this. I know it played the national anthem, and then you had the test card.
Yep.
But I think from what I've heard, it was either like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. in America. And I think it started much earlier in the morning because you had like your early morning news and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you hear people talking about there being cartoons in the morning, but certainly in England, it wasn't, having TV on in the morning wasn't a thing. And I think even like Channel 4 didn't come on until the afternoon. I'm sure that was the thing. I seem to remember being home from school or sick from school, and then you'd have free reign of the TV, and then all you had was BBC One and BBC Two, and then one of them was probably playing schools programming, and all the other ones were test cards.
Well, there you go, guys. This is the information about TV that happened 50 years. What is it? Probably 80 years ago. I don't know how many years ago now. It's 2024 that you never know you needed to know. Bringing you stuff hot off the presses around here. Anyway, Tim, do you have anything else you'd like to leave the people with?
Okay, so yes, I have one thing to leave the people with, and I didn't want to do it at the beginning of the show. I wanted to do it at the end of the show. Now, This is a spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen the Ghostbusters film, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and you would like to see it, now is your time to turn the podcast off, because I'm going to talk about that film because I went to see it at the cinema. So if you really want to see it, you don't want the plot spoiled, you don't want to know anything about it, now is the time to shut down. Thank you. Be kind to everyone that you know.
3, 2, 1, go.
Boom. All right. So for those people who are still hanging around, I went to see Ghostbusters Frozen Empire at the cinema. This is going to be probably the only film I'm going to see this year because, I'm not really that interested in films. And I did see that they're remaking The Fall Guy, which they should really stop. I wish I knew how I could stop that, but it's not possible. But anyway, That's beside
Tim
the
wants to call somebody.
yeah, but that is beside the point. So I went to see it. I really liked Ghostbusters Afterlife. And I'm a huge fan of the original Ghostbusters from the 80s. I have a Ghostbusters repro jacket. And if you've ever seen any of the videos that I make on YouTube, there is a Ghostbusters 1 poster, cinema poster behind me. I did not like it. I did not like this film. I think it's too long. I mean, it's around 2 hours, which is standard for this kind of stuff. But the pacing is terrible. So the very beginning of the film, the new Ghostbusters are in the firehouse and they're in the middle of a ghostbusting job. And then there's a whole middling around, and like Winston now has got some kind of ghost lab type thing because he's bankrolling the Ghostbusters. And there's a few throwback characters to the original series, like that Winston Peck or whatever his name, Peck, the guy who was from the EPA. He's now the mayor. And then the person who's over the public library. So they go back to the public library, and then you have the same ghost that was in the first film. Yeah. And it's kind of wishy-washy, and it doesn't. And there's all these characters
all over the place.
Yeah, the characters that they brought in from the afterlife that don't really serve any purpose. You've got Podcast, and then you've got the young lady whose name escapes me. They do nothing to this plot at all. They just like shoehorn this. Oh, Podcast, hey, how you doing? It's nothing. There's too much going on, and then there's this whole subplot with this ghost girl who's become super friendly with Venkman's daughter, and I can't remember the Phoebe. That's it.
Okay.
And it looks terrible. I mean, this ghost apparition is poor, and it adds nothing to the plot. And then there's a bit where like Phoebe goes into this machine in the ghost lab, and then she somehow knows if she's in there for a certain time, her spirit will come out, and then she can be at one with the ghost friend, and they can be super friends, and they stare into each other's eyes, and it's all beautiful and terrible. Right, and then the whole premise of the film is that New York City gets frozen over by this new ghost phenomenon that covers the entire city and turns.
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer.
Yeah, and you would think that's the centerpiece of the film. You would think if you was pacing this film out, that would come about halfway through, and then the Ghostbusters would be working with all this stuff, to save New York City. It happens in the last 20 minutes of the film in the firehouse, and that's the point where all the old characters get shoehorned into it, and it's just poor.
That's terrible, because I was kind of excited to see it, Tim. I might still watch it just for prosperity purposes, but it sounds like to me they just wanted to throw as much into one movie as they could.
Yeah, and there's lots of callbacks. I mean, if you was to watch it at home and you was able to sort of freeze frame through various scenes, there are so many little callbacks.
Like there's Easter eggs.
Yeah, there's like a little bit with a paper airplane, and the paper airplane is possessed. But it's the piece of paper that's folded into a paper airplane. It has a logo on it, a bank logo. And it's exactly the same bank from the first Ghostbusters film, where they go in and get the mortgage and say, everyone's got 3 mortgages these days, Ray, you're not going to regret it. It's that very same bank. And there's like little callbacks that are cool.
That would be fun to see.
But the plot is a mess. It goes on too long, and the pacing is terrible.
Well, Tim, I'm sorry for you. You go to the movie theater once, and this is what happens.
Yeah, and I saw Afterlife 2 or 3 times in theaters because I liked it so much. And then when it came out on home video, we probably watched it maybe 2 or 3 times again because we liked it so much. It really took the story into a different direction. It introduced the new characters. It was very well done. And then, moving back to New York City, they could have done this different and it would have been great, but it's just poor.
Well, you just need to start writing whoever produces Ghostbusters, just start sending them emails. So if they decide to do it again, Tim, they could call you.
Well, I'm going to send them a strongly worded letter, and that will show them.
All right. Well, with Tim's movie review, I guess that we'll call it Tim's movie review. We'll leave it with that. All right. Bye.
Bye. See you later. Bye-bye.